Deep within the clutter of the forgotten attic, Soren found a relic of a lost era. It was a television set, heavy and boxy, draped in a shroud of gray dust. While the rest of the house hummed with modern, invisible signals, this machine felt heavy with a different kind of history. Soren pulled the sheet away, sneezing as a cloud of the past filled the air. Soren hauled the machine to his bedroom and plugged it into the wall. With a heavy mechanical click, he turned the plastic dial. The screen didn't show a picture. Instead, it erupted into a frantic dance of black and white sparks. The sound was a rhythmic, oceanic roar, the sound of nothingness, or perhaps the sound of everything at once. He sat for hours, mesmerized by the chaotic patterns. Somewhere in the middle of the noise, Soren thought he heard a rhythm. It wasn't just random static, it sounded like a heavy, raspy breath. He leaned closer, his nose almost touching the cold glass, trying to find a shape in the storm of pixels. His friend Saga visited that afternoon and recoiled at the sight of the humming machine. "You shouldn't play with that," she warned, her voice trembling. "There's an old story about the white noise man. They say if you listen to the static long enough, you start to hear him calling your name, and if you answer, he finds a way out." Soren laughed at the legend, but that night, he couldn't sleep. The TV turned itself on with a sharp crackle. The room filled with that familiar, rushing sound. Soren sat up in bed, his eyes drawn to the screen. The static seemed deeper now, forming swirling vortexes that looked like beckoning hands. A shape began to solidify behind the glass. It was tall and jagged, shifting with every pop of the interference. A hand, pale and unnaturally long, pressed against the inside of the screen. The glass didn't shatter. It rippled like water under the pressure of the creature's touch. Saga burst into the room, sensing something was wrong. She found Soren frozen, his face inches from the screen. His eyes were no longer his own. They were filled with the same flickering gray sparks that danced on the display. He was whispering to the glass, his voice a perfect imitation of the television's hiss. From the center of the screen, the entity known as Hiss began to emerge. It didn't have a face, only a shifting television snow void where features should be. It pulled its long, static-drenched limbs through the glass, dragging the cold silence of the void into the warm air of the bedroom. Soren didn't run. He reached out his hand, meeting the static-filled fingers of Hiss. As they touched, Soren's body began to blur at the edges, his solid form dissolving into 1,000 tiny gray dots. Hiss leaned forward, its lack of a mouth emitting a final, deafening roar of white noise. The next morning, the room was silent. The television was off, its screen a dark, empty mirror. Saga stood before it, trembling as she reached for the power knob. When the screen flickered to life, the room was filled with static once more. But there, trapped behind the glass, a small gray figure that looked just like Soren hammered silently against the screen, begging to be let out.